Hey guys, Parfax here, and it's Tuesday. You know what that means? It's Tier List Tuesday. All right, let's get started. All right, in one of my previous videos, there was a suggestion that, well, maybe I separate primary and secondary weapons. I made a tier list video, and a few people got confused at a few of my weapon choices, and I kind of grouped them together, and it's just an overall best weapons in the game. So after the suggestion, I decided to bring you the video because honestly, it's going to be a lot of fun. But first, we want to kind of have a little bit of criteria. So the criteria here is, first, we are talking about PvP. In PvE, something like the life staff can be a pretty insane secondary weapon as long as you were scaling the life staff at all on whatever stat you were scaling. But this is mainly going to be for PvP. And when it comes to a secondary weapon, this can qualify as a few different things. Typically, it's going to bring you some form of either CC or maneuverability or something, or like a buff or some sense of that. So typically, one of the best combos that, we talk about is maybe like bow rapier, right? The bow is clearly the primary weapon, and the rapier is clearly the secondary weapon. We're obviously going to talk about both of those, but it is very clearly defined. Now, there's some other combinations that are going to be a little bit less defined, but we'll kind of go over that as we go, and let's get into it. So first, we have the fire staff, and honestly, the fire staff doesn't bring really much utility at all. It has basically some dot damage. It has some damage. It's a great primary weapon. But when it comes to a secondary weapon, it has burnout, and that's about it. And honestly, there's a few other weapons that do what burnout does, but quite a bit better, and you don't have to worry about getting CC'd out of it. So honestly, we're just going to put it in not a secondary weapon. This isn't a shot against fire staff. I've used it as a secondary weapon, specifically in one of my old Void Gauntlet builds. But fire staff is just not really a secondary weapon. I'm not saying you can't use it as a secondary weapon, especially if you're doing like Ice Gauntlet, fire staff. You can technically use it as a secondary weapon, but you'd probably be better off with a little bit extra, other than just getting a little bit extra chip damage in. Next, we have the life staff. And again, I'm just going to put it as not a secondary weapon. I know you technically can put the life staff as a secondary weapon, but honestly, if you're going to put your life staff on your bar in PvP, it really should be your main weapon to choose. It's like if you pair anything with the life staff, that weapon is essentially just going to be its secondary weapon. The life staff is very good and one of the most powerful weapons in the game, and you are almost unkillable with the Ice Gauntlet. With the life staff, but it's really just not a secondary weapon. Next, we have, we're going to move this down here we're going to move a couple down here. We're going to move a couple down here, and we'll talk about these when we get towards the end. And next, we have the Void Gauntlet, and we're going to put this in the very good category. Honestly, you probably could put it closer to the maybe OP. It is honestly right now the epitome of a support/secondary weapon. It has Oblivion, it has Putrefying Scream, it has a little bit of healing. Honestly, it's a great secondary weapon. It's in the very good. I don't think it is maybe OP territory. It does, if they nerfed the Oblivion trait, it would make this weapon a lot worse. They have nerfed Scream a lot, so Scream is not nearly as devastating as it used to be. But honestly, it's a very good secondary weapon. It's a very good supporting weapon. It's not as much of a damage dealer as it used to be, but it's still a really good Void Gauntlet. And honestly, it is kind of where they wanted it to be anyway. Next, we have the sword and shield. And honestly, this has been my favorite weapon as of late. I have been absolutely loving the sword and shield, and we're going to put it in the very good category. And here is why. When it comes to the sword and shield, you have a couple things that you really need to have for a secondary weapon. You have Defiant Stance, which makes you very tanky. You have Shield Bash, which can stun an enemy to allow you to get away. And you have a Gap Closer with Leaping Strike, which can get you to a target or away from it. So honestly, I have been absolutely loving this weapon. It is probably my favorite primary weapon, or favorite weapon in general right now to use. It is so smooth. It is so fluent. I absolutely love this weapon. I don't think it's really under the maybe OP category for secondary weapons, but when it comes to like dueling and stuff like that, the sword and shield is absolutely crazy, and it may be one of the best dueling weapons in the game. Next, we have the Hatchet, and we're going to put the Hatchet in the average category. The Hatchet used to be kind of the most broken secondary weapon. A lot of people used to use the Hatchet and the Life Staff at the same time. You had your Defy Death, you had your extra healing from Berserk. But honestly, it's been kind of outshined. It's kind of an average weapon pretty much across the board. I don't think there's anything wrong with running Hatchet as your secondary weapon. I know, some Great Axe users will use it. Life Staff, I've seen Life Staff users use it. It's a very fun weapon. Berserk is crazy good, but that's about the only utility it brings. You definitely can use it, but I kind of just put it in the average category. Next, we have Spear, and we're going to put it in the very good category. If you've seen, especially these two weapons paired together, or honestly, Spear paired with anything at all, you can do basically a CC lock build. It has CC. I would venture to not put it in the maybe OP category just because it doesn't have any really movement skills. And I think in order to get the maybe OP category, you either have to do something pretty much completely broken, or you have to have some form of it all, right? A movement, CC. You got to have a little bit of it all. And the Spear has a lot of CC, but it doesn't have that much movement. So we're just going to put it in the very good category. Next, we have the Great Axe, and we're going to put it again in the very good category. It does kind of have it all with the criteria that I just talked about the Spear, but its CC isn't quite nearly as good as the Spear, but it does have some maneuverability with charge. It has Gravel, which is very, very good. I know Life Staff users will use the Great Axe, or any strength user can use the Great Axe and put it on their back bar. It's a really, really, really good weapon, especially like in wars and OPRs. It gives you a lot of catch. You don't typically see it as a secondary weapon. You do see it on some Life Staff users, but honestly, it's just a very, very, very good weapon all around, and it's the reason why the Great Axe is extremely meta right now. But it's more of a primary weapon. But the reason why we're still not putting it on not a secondary weapon because it does have secondary traits to it. Next, we have the Warhammer. And honestly, I don't know where to put this weapon. It's clearly in one of these two categories. I don't think it's the best. Let's put it in the no, I can't. If I can't put the Spear up there, I can't put the Warhammer up there. We really want everybody just to be in the very good category. We're going to put it in the very good category. It doesn't have any movement at all, but it has a ton of CC. It has some self-sustain. Can I really put it in the maybe OP category when I just said the Spear isn't? Well, let's be honest. The Warhammer. Okay, we're putting it in the maybe OP category. I think it is definitely not OP, but I think it is probably better than these weapons, specifically paired with the Great Axe or even something like Sword and Shield. Yeah, I've seen some Life Staff users use it, but honestly, it has so much CC. It has self-sustain. It has so much to its kit. Remember when I said the Spear, you need kind of either have it all or kind of do something kind of broken? And I don't think the Warhammer does something necessarily broken, but it has so many CC and abilities that it is just absolutely crazy. And in that way, we're just putting maybe OP category. You can yell at me in the comment section down below. You're like, Parfax, you literally just contradicted your argument from the Spear. But, it is what it is. Next, bow, we're putting the not secondary weapon. It has some ability to get some haste, and that is it. There is pretty much almost every weapon in the game is better as a secondary weapon than the bow. We got some bow buffs coming up. We're going to do a video on what I think how the bow should get buffed. But it's really not a secondary weapon. And again, we're going to put the musket in the not a secondary weapon category either. They're both very much primary weapons. Now, you can, if you want to go like full Chad, run these two weapons together. And you can argue then, well, what's the primary and what's the secondary? And honestly, you're just kind of, running two primary weapons, which is why you don't see it that often. But they're both really just secondary weapons. Next, we have the Blunderbuss. And we're just going to put it in the average category. It has some traits that you want. It has a slow from the net pool. It has the knockdown. It has, doesn't really have any maneuverability skills, but it's a very average secondary weapon. It's a pretty good primary weapon in the current meta right now, but it's kind of in the average category when it comes to secondary. Next, we have the Ice Gauntlet and Rapier. So we're going to put these in the maybe OP category and the best category. That's why I want to save these for last, because I truly believe that these two are by far the best secondary weapons in the game, followed by Warhammer, and then there is another gap for the rest of these. So, and honestly, there's probably a gap about right here as well. I think these three are kind of on their own tier. Then you have Great Axe, and then you have these two, and then you have these. So, what are we going to put in the maybe EOP category? And we're probably just going to put the Rapier. Now, I know in my video, a lot of you keep saying how the Rapier isn't that good. I'm telling you right now that the Rapier is one of the best, if not the best secondary weapons in the game. It allows you to play super aggressive, especially if you pair it with light armor. You are physically uncatchable in light armor with the Rapier. I don't care what your first weapon is. If you play it correctly, you are uncatchable. The only thing that can kill you are ranged. You cannot be caught by Great Axe users. You cannot be caught by Sword and Shield users, Fire Staff users, you know, Great Axe, Warhammer, Hatchet, Blunderbuss, Sword and Shield, Void Gauntlet, Ice Gauntlet. You can get away from all of these. Ice Gauntlet, we're going to talk about it in a minute. That's probably a bad scenario. But the Rapier is absolutely insane. I have played, this is probably my most used weapon as of late. You cannot convince me that it is not the second best secondary weapon in the game, only followed by the Ice Gauntlet. The Ice Gauntlet, the reason why it is going up here, has no maneuverability, but it does have a defensive skill in Ice Tomb, which kind of makes up for its lack of mobility. But the fact that the meta is the Ice Gauntlet paired with things like Great Axe, Life Staff, Fire Staff. I've seen it paired with the Blunderbuss. I've seen it paired with Void Gauntlet. I've seen it Rapier, use it as a primary and Rapier as a secondary. I've seen Warhammer Ice Gauntlet. I have seen I've seen Sword and Shield Ice Gauntlet. I have seen the Ice Gauntlet with every combination of weapons in the game almost. I haven't seen an Ice Gauntlet bow, but I'm sure that's coming. So Ice Gauntlet is absolutely crazy. I'm going to have a video on how I think they should nerf the Ice Gauntlet, because honestly, there's not much broken with it right now, in the sense that stuff's not quite working as intended. There is still a little bit of a bug that doesn't really matter when it comes to your damage side of it, because you get more damage if you just slot like an opal. But the Ice Gauntlet is CC is absolutely crazy. Ice Shower, Ice Storm, and then having the ability to, if you get Gravwelled, to just go ahead and get into your Entomb to kind of soak up. They either have to let you go or use a lot of their time to actually break in your Ice Tomb. Not that it takes that long, but it just has pretty much everything you want as an absolutely crazy secondary weapon, especially when you pair it with a very, very strong primary weapon like the Great Axe. Especially that is very much the meta right now, is Great Axe Ice Gauntlet, and they're not even caring about scaling the Ice Gauntlet. It's all about the CC it brings. All right, guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video on the best secondary weapons in the game. Let me know in the comment section down below where you think I went right and where you would think I went wrong. We're going to have more videos coming up later this week. We might talk about maybe in the same category, the Ice Gauntlet and the bow, how I think they should buff the bow and how I think they should nerf the Ice Gauntlet. Maybe that'll be a video for this week. We are doing some testing videos. We did a video last week about 600 versus 625 gear, and I had a few comments in the comment section down below about Parfax, you didn't do it correctly, because if they have 625 gear, it makes a huge difference. So we tested that, and we're going to bring you that video this week. It'll probably be either tomorrow or Thursday. All right, guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.